Hey everyone, this is Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up, conversation series where I get a chat with lovely other writers. Before we get started, just a quick reminder, if you are interested in one-on-one writing coaching, or if you're interested in person writing retreats, please check out my website. I offer these things under my company name, Unbound Writer. You can just go to carterwilson.com. There's a little link on there that says for writers and read all about our offerings. We will be launching the Unbound Writer site soon. And at that time, we are also going to be offering online classes for purchase. So please help support a starving artist. Today on the show, I had the lovely and talented Araminta Hall. So Araminta is the author of 6 books. Her most recent one of the Good Guys, which is published by Gillian Flynn Books. And we all know Gillian Flynn. She wrote Gone Girl, and she became just this tremendous tour de force within the mystery and thriller community. And now she has her own publishing company. So that is fantastic. And obviously she's only going to take on books that are of the highest quality and the best kind of stories in that thriller area. And so Araminta, as a highly successful and talented writer, clearly met that threshold. And we had a tremendous conversation. I had some audio issues. I don't know if that came through. She was a little late because she was stuck in traffic. She's in the UK, but we figured it out. We made it work, and we jumped into things, and we had a great conversation, and we talked a lot about the insecurity of being a writer and how that manifests itself, and kind of that idea of never thinking you're quite good enough. But then also the flip side, the optimistic side, is the best is always yet to come, or can always be yet to come in the life of a writer. So I felt like it was almost like a co-therapy session for both of us. And she was tremendous to talk to. And then we actually did the making it up portion with a sentence out of her own book, which went awesome. And I'm not going to spoil it, but it ended rather disgustingly. So you're going to like this one, folks. This is my conversation with Araminta Hall. Fantastic. And make sure I'm pronouncing your name right for when I do my intros and outros. Is it Araminta?
Araminta, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, Americans definitely pronounce it in a different way. So.
I just want to make sure. And I was curious also, because normally in my outro, I'll obviously talk about your work, and I usually plug a website. Do you have? I was struggling to find. Oh, so you don't have a website? Good for you.
I'm so bad online, which I know is crazy of me. I just I don't have a website, and I'm really bad on social media, so I am not a publisher's dream.
Well, that's kind of a curious topic to talk about, actually, because obviously, when you talk to other writers and people are asking for advice, that's always like a huge thing. It's like, make sure you have some kind of online presence. But there are some people who do quite well who don't have much of a presence at all. And apparently you're one of them. But have you run into issues with that? Have your publishers really tried to say you really need to do this?
No, not at all. I've never had that. And I do hear people saying that. I see it online, people saying about, yeah, that publishers won't look at their work unless they've got a certain. I'm not sure that's true. I think for non-fiction it's true.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's true for fiction at all. I mean, I know so many writers who have no online presence. So, I mean, I have Instagram and I have Twitter, which actually I never use Twitter, but like around publication, I will post stuff. I mean, but I'm one of those really irritating social media users in that I will just literally post about work and only at the time, then I'll go quiet for like 6 months or something. So, I mean, it's a terrible way to get engagement. And I'm sure there is a much better, I know there's a much better way of doing it than I do it.
But you have to choose what works for you and what makes you happy. And if
I could not be. I find social media so difficult that I could not be. I don't even like looking at it like on a personal level, let alone professionally. So I do, yeah. I mean, if I didn't work or something, I would just not have it at all. But yeah, I think, it's like you have to, I guess you sort of have to slightly buy into it.
Yeah, yeah, it's never an easy thing, and it's never an easy balance if you are active to decide, like, because we have seen the authors who like are very active, but only literally post about their books, and you get numb to that after a while.
Right,
And but of course,
exactly.
when you get close to a launch, I'm a couple months out from a launch, you start ramping up, and your PR team wants you to be more active, and you try to be creative, but it's homework, man. It's a lot. It's a
It's just,
lot of
I just find it embarrassing. That's my
yeah.
problem. I don't think that's a really British thing,
It
but
is a very British thing.
yeah, I feel like self-promotion. I just want to jump off a cliff or something when someone tells me I need to do that. But I get that I need to do it. But I find it so embarrassing. And I also find it so embarrassing even posting personal things. I mean, like I wouldn't ever post anything personal because it just feels, I don't know why anyone would be interested. Like my friends and family I talk to, and I don't know. I just like it feels weird. Like, and if you go on holiday or something and you post a picture, it just feels like boasting to me.
Yeah.
It's like
Well,
I have such a low threshold of embarrassment that I'm like, it's just not the medium for me.
well, and it's a very writerly thing, right? To have that kind of introversion to some degree, I don't want to say low self-esteem, but I know just speaking for myself, when I started writing 20 years ago, I was embarrassed by it, because
Totally.
and I had severe imposter syndrome and a refusal to even tell people I was a writer, even after my third book was published, because I just felt like such a fraud. Did you, as you started getting into your writing career, did you kind of go through those cycles? Because it's pretty common.
I mean, I have it now. There's never a moment when I don't have it. I'm constantly feel that I'm going to be found out. I actually have a recurring dream
Mhm.
where my publishers discovered I've plagiarized my books, and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't realize I have plagiarized all my books. And it's like I feel it that deeply that I can't quite, yeah, no, just everything. I sort of just hate. I mean, everything I do, I think is awful. In fact, I did an event the other day, and someone asked me, like, at what book number did you start thinking you were a good writer? And I was like, what?
It
Like,
hasn't happened.
that's not happened. We're nowhere near that yet.
Yeah.
The thing. They were so shocked. They were like, but you published 6 novels. Like, don't you? I was just like, no, I don't think. But then the moderator actually said, I think that if you sorry, that's my daughter going behind the screen there.
Quite all right.
No, I mean the moderator said, I think that if you suddenly thought you were good, you'd sort of lose something, wouldn't
Right.
you? So
Right.
I think I hang on to that, and I'm like, maybe we need to think we're bad to be good writers.
It is, but you can't go too far, right? Because if you have no confidence, then that's
Mm.
very dangerous. Because then you start listening to all the advice people are giving you, and you take all the advice, and then your book is terrible.
Oh
But
my God, completely.
you
Yeah, no, I
have,
agree.
yeah,
And I think it's also really hard to write when you have a book out, because I think it's so confidence knocking having a book out, even though actually this book that's just come out of mine, it has had uniformly lovely reviews and such a good response online. But there's always something that you feel you're not doing right, or
yeah,
you could be selling more, or you could be in every single bookshop in the whole world, all that sort of stuff. So you're constantly battling against this feeling that everybody else is doing better than you. And
right,
actually, that is, I think, another reason that I hate social media, because obviously we're all guilty of it. I'm the same. Like, you only post your good work
right.
news. So, you log on and you see like film deals, top 10, this, everything. And it's like, and you're just like, oh God. And
Yeah,
of course, it's like we all have good news. It's just, for the people who posted it that day, they probably haven't posted anything good for like 2 months. But it's
right.
like, it just makes you feel so awful about yourself.
Right, right. Yeah, and a writer's life is really difficult because it is very cyclical, and there's, because good news is not that frequent, you do want to
Yeah.
kind of shout it to the rooftops. And the funny thing is, you could have amazing news, but still not be making much money on it. And people, and there's such a disconnect in terms of the public view of like, well, you've clearly got it made because you've hit a bestseller list, or you've got these amazing reviews. Like, yeah, it's all great, but I've got a mortgage to pay.
I know, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely the perception of what writers are doing and earning is very is very different from the reality most of the time. But yeah, it's a very strange profession because I think a lot of the time it's such an internalized profession anyway.
Right.
But a lot of the time you're also having to talk yourself down from things. So, because it's not like you talk to your agent and editor every single day,
No.
and you can't email them every time something happens or you get a confidence dip. So you're constantly just battling against yourself and trying to build yourself up and then hating yourself at the same time. And
Right.
so
Right.
it's crazy. I mean, it's not a very good profession for mental health, I don't think.
No, which is why I think as a writer, you need to, because of all of those things, the only salve for that is to write what brings you personal joy. Like, for me, I write for myself, and I just kind of hope that, somebody wants to buy it. And same thing once the book is out. If I feel like I've done everything I could possibly do for it, then you just got to let it go. And like what happens
Yeah.
is what happens, because if you try to be strategic about everything and you have all that anxiety on top, it's soul crushing.
Oh
So
my
if you
God,
can't find the joy
totally.
in it.
Now, I always feel really worried when you talk to students, writing students, and they start talking too much about the market. And of course, you have to know your market. You have to be slightly savvy in it all, but you can't write for a market, or you can't think, oh, clowns are massive at the moment, so I'm going to write a novel about a clown. Because of course, the truth is that even if you got a book deal tomorrow, your book would be out in a minimum of a year, but it's probably going to be 2 years anyway. So it's
Right.
like, it's crazy to do that. But it's also really hard because you get, especially I think when you get a few books in, you are aware that it's a business and you are aware that there are trends and all those things. And so it's hard not to sort of feel yourself being swayed by things. But I think you're completely right. In the end, you just have to go with the stories that appeal to you
Yeah.
and not mind too much
Right.
about.
Right.
I mean, it's so hard not
It
to
is.
mind.
It is.
It's
And
so,
you're right, with the multiple books, once you get probably 4 or 5 books in, you do start kind of wondering like, okay, what can we do different this time?
yeah.
Last time was great, but what can we do different this time? And the answer is nobody knows. Nobody really knows what that formula is, because there isn't a formula, because it's easy to think like, well, if my publisher just put some more money into PR and marketing, I could hit this bestseller list. And that's not true at all. There are books that hit without any kind of effort, and there's books that have massive funds and just kind of do okay.
No, completely.
And the flip side of that is the optimist side of it is, who knows, your next book could go through the roof. You could be 80 years old and it could be your 50th book, and that's the one that hits. So the best could always be yet to come. And I think that's one of the greatest things about being a writer.
No, I completely agree about that. That is definitely the flip side of all the pessimism. Is it's a real act of courage and hope writing a book and putting it out there, because you're just, there's a tiny part of you always thinking, yeah, this could be the one, this is, and that's an incredible feeling to go in with. It's like, and it's an incredible, and actually even in the life of a book, your book can have second lives or third lives or whatever. And so sometimes, like, I mean, I still get royalty checks from my first novel, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't get royalty checks from like my third novel, say. It's like, so some books some books just have a lovely continual life that
Right.
actually over the course of their lifetime, do well for you. But it might not be that you came out of the, out of the gates and hit the #1 spot, but
Right.
you can just sell really. In fact, I had dinner. I went to a publishing dinner a few years ago, and I sat next to this lovely editor, and she was talking about this, and she said she had just had a book pass the million sale point,
Hmm.
which she had published 15 years before.
Oh,
It
wow.
had never had any reviews. It had never, ever hit a bestseller list, but it just had steadily sold this was over like worldwide sales. So like over the course of, in like, I think she said it was like 5 or 6 countries, it had just steadily sold for 15 years. And I thought that was just so lovely.
Yeah.
It's like this little book that none of us would have ever heard of is actually providing an income and a life and everything for writers.
Right. And if you try to analyze what was it about that book, you would never be able to figure it out. It is just this
Absolutely not.
organic thing that just happened. But that is, thank you for bringing me hope.
Well, I'm bringing myself home.
Because for listeners to understand, selling 1 million copies is it's a lot. I think there was a study, a very unscientific study done once where a few different writing organizations just polled their members about numbers of sales. And there was just this general consensus that any book published, whether it's self-published or traditionally published, on average globally sells about 250 copies. And, that's obviously a very low number because it's including a lot of self-published that doesn't sell anything. But, even to sell 50,000 copies is a big deal.
Number. 50,000 copies is a great. It's funny that because I've just had a book out and I was in New York for one of the launches. And I've got I've got a few friends in New York, and they were like, how many copies do you have to sell to hit the New York Times bestseller list? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I think it's about 8,000-9,000 to get, or 9 or 10. And they were like, 8 or 9,000. They were like, they'd sort of expected me to say like 80,000 copies or something,
Right.
And it's like, I was like, no. Like if you sold 80,000 copies in your lifetime of a book, you would be like a bestseller. That would be really, really good. So we're dealing with, and they were like, how does publishing make money then? I don't understand. And it's like, that's a question writers ask quite a lot.
Yeah. I was at a conference last year and there was, I like the panels that are industry panels rather than craft panels. And there was a panel with some agents and editors. And they were just kind of saying, you don't even have to earn out your advance to make money for the publisher. And I thought that was really interesting because you do wonder, like, people, and I'm not even talking about huge advances, just typical advances. And if you don't earn out, you always think like, oh my God, they're not going to want anything else. Cause that's happened to me before. I sold my second book, did okay, but it earned out at its advance, but it didn't make a profit for them. And so they wouldn't take my third book, even though they liked it. And that's when I realized like, oh, wow, this is an industry. They have to, and which totally makes sense. I mean, I get it completely. When did you did you want to be a writer? Was it a kind of an aspiration of yours, or was it something that just kind of came out of you?
No, it was completely an aspiration. And I mean, I sort of both, I guess. I mean, I just have always read since I was really, really young. And I obviously, but I was like a real avid reader, I was one of those kids I still am an adult, like that's what I do. That's my only hobby is reading, basically. And I just thought as a kid, like that was a perfectly feasible job to want to be a writer. And it wasn't really until I got to university, and my parents very sweetly always told me that it was absolutely a totally feasible job. And I was always like writing novels in little notebooks. And it was only when I got to university really that I started thinking, oh my God, I'm actually going to have to do something else before I'm a writer. Like I'm going to have to earn money. I'm going to have to pay the rent somehow. And you don't just have a job as a writer where someone pays you a monthly salary. So yeah, so it's just what I always wanted to do, and it's what I was always working towards. And so yeah, I mean, I think I would still be if I wasn't published, I think I would still be writing novels, because
it's
I
just
just
in
love
you.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you probably found out as you started to like look at the industry side and the actual, what's an agent? How do I get an agent? Like,
Yeah.
it's really difficult. Did you have, so you write your first book. What was that experience like in terms of getting it to the world?
I mean, I definitely didn't ever show the world my first books that I wrote. They were just pretty, even I knew at the time they were pretty awful. And then I had a few years where I was a journalist, and I was sending books out, and I was doing it at a time so long ago, like before email, really. I mean, email had just come in, actually, I remember, but submissions were still, you would print out the first, 3 chapters of your manuscript and a letter, and you would also enclose a stamped, addressed, self-addressed envelope, so they could send it back to you, and it would sort of thud through your door 2 weeks later, and you'd been rejected again. And yeah, so I was sort of sporadically doing that, and then I actually decided to do an MA in creative writing, which was like a real, like, okay, I'm going to take this seriously, and I'm going to. And it was a full-time course, but it was actually only 2 days a week, so it was still possible to do. I actually had young children as well at the time, so it was sort of possible to do a bit of work, do a bit of the MA, do a bit of childcare, and yeah, and at that really, it was a year after that I got my first deal, because it was like one of those. It wasn't just that it taught me how to, really helped me to understand how to write. Actually, I think the big thing it helped me to do was understand how to edit, and that thing of like cutting out stuff that's superfluous, all that. But also it really was just really informative about how the industry worked, and just the nuts and bolts of what to do. And I don't think I'd have got published without it, because I didn't meet my agent or editor through the course, but I just understood the world better, and I was able to approach the right people, and I was able to do it in the right way, and I understood. Yeah, so that for me was the game changer thing.
And and a lot of it also is just the act of continuously writing. I mean, it's funny, it resonates with me, the whole idea of like mailing, because when I first was agent shopping, you were physically mailing letters. So
Yeah.
I was thinking about, is this a good weight of paper that will they be impressed by the type of paper that I,
Oh my
and,
God.
and I think I had 75 rejections until I got my agent, who I'm actually still with 20 years later. But, but it just and then our first 3 books didn't sell, but it just took writing and writing and writing. And then you start to learn over time, but all those rejections are giving you tremendous advice, because you're learning. And same thing with taking a creative writing, like getting an MA in creative writing, is that criticism is so critical, not only to understand how to write better, but to actually, absorb it and say, okay, I can deal with this, because there's going to be so much rejection ahead of you if you can't handle it. And that's what stops a lot of writers. They don't want to either show their work, or they can't handle somebody telling them no.
Oh, completely. And I think a lot of writers can't handle the edit, like the
Right.
idea that their precious work is going to be changed by other
Right.
people, which is, I mean, you definitely won't be a writer in that case, will
Right.
you? Because it's
Right.
like, it's a huge fun, and it makes us all better.
Right.
But I do think as well that is one of the things that makes me sad about our industry. It's like what you said about getting better and better the more you write. I think that is so true. And I think that most writers get better with every book they write. And I certainly understand the craft of writing so much more than I did before at the beginning. But, it's an industry that just lauds the debut. And I mean, sometimes an incredible debut emerges, but more often than not, a writer's 4th, 5th book is going to be their best book,
Right.
or longer even.
Right.
And so it's quite topsy-turvy how we have it. And I don't really understand why, because it's not an industry that needs new faces or anything like that, because it's not us that are the, you know, is the product, it's the book. And most people don't really know if your book is a debut, or, you know, most readers who walk into a shop, they're not looking for a new writer. They're looking for just a good story and something that appeals to them. So I don't understand why we do it in this industry so much, of like the debut, you know, where it's like, definitely you get better the more you write.
Right. And the reality of it is, I've talked to a lot of writers who their debut, you know, really did well because it was really promoted and really embraced. And their second, third, fourth books, not so much. And then maybe their fifth book does well again. But it is, you can't, you know, just because you have a successful book, it's almost never that you just continuously have that, unless you're, you know, Stephen King or someone who's just gold in the bank. So, but it is always a battle, which is why you have to just always return to like, why am I doing this? I do this because I love it, and I can't picture myself not doing it. So I'll deal with all the hard stuff if I get to keep doing what I love. And you can't say that about a lot of jobs. A lot of jobs, nobody says I do this because I love it.
Oh, exactly. And that's, you know, you have to sort of accept that you do get so much from it as a job. But it is that, I mean, like going back to what you were saying about rejection's just not just at the beginning. Rejection is continual in a writing career, even when you are continually published. You know, I've never had a situation since I've first been published. I've not had a book rejected traditionally by a publisher, you know, saying, oh no, we just don't want it. But I've had so much rejection in that. And, you know, that can even come down to your editor saying, oh, this needs everything, you know, everything about this needs to change or something. You know, you're constantly, and then, you know, you're tagged into a review that's like, this is the worst book I've ever read. You know, it's like, or you're not selling like you want to sell. And then, so there are so many little mini rejections along the way. It's very rare. Yeah, like you say, for someone to just be continually successful is, I mean, there's probably about 5 writers who that happens to.
Right. And and that rejection comes in a lot of forms that most people wouldn't even recognize. So you could be continuously selling your books to publishers, but you might get to the point where the publisher on the next book, your advance is a little bit lower because you didn't sell as many copies as before. That's a rejection in a way. And you're like, okay, let's deal with that. But it's interesting what you say about the editorial letter. We talk about that a lot on this show, and how people perceive it. You get that letter in your email box, the PDF, and it is overwhelming, because it's like, here are the 2 things that we love about your book. Here are the 20 things that we suggest you might want to take a second look at. And it is and I never feel precious, like, oh, don't destroy my precious, because I always feel so insecure about my work that, but I'm more upset by, oh, this is going to take a lot of work. But I also try to get the mindset of like, I can't wait to make this book better, because all of these comments are spot on. I couldn't have thought of it myself. Everything's a team effort. And I'm grateful for you giving me this wisdom. How do you approach it when you get that letter in? Because it never gets easier.
No, I mean, that is, well, I totally agree with you. I love that part of the process, and I'm not ever offended by anything any editor says. I'm like, I'm the same. I feel like writers can get their book to a really good point, but we are never ever gonna make our books perfect. I mean, well, no book is ever even going to end up perfect, but we're never going to get it. We're never going to get it good enough for publication, because we're just too close to it. You know, we've created this story from the first word, and we have, you know, we've lived it. We're involved in it. We know these characters intimately, so we are not objective, and you have to have an objective eye on it, asking you those questions like, why is this here, and would that person actually do that, and all those sorts of things. And I agree, like when you get those letters, part of your heart sinks, because you're like, oh my God, why did I not notice these things? You know, why? And, you know, part of you is like, oh, this must be a terrible writer, because I can't I just can't, I didn't work out this incredibly obvious thing that needs to happen in my book, and then there's that feeling as well of, and it's going to take me a month to do this, and I'm really bored of this story now and all that.
Right.
But it is the part where you're actually going to create a publishable book, and that's quite exciting in itself.
Right.
And also, I think, in fact, I asked my editor that, who recently, I said, have you ever had a book in that you've not changed one word? And she just laughed. She was like, that will never happen to any editor ever.
Right.
So it's like, I suppose that,
it's literally their job.
Yeah, exactly. And she was like, even if I know a book is brilliant, I also know ways that it's going to be better or for the market or something. So it's like, so I think that, I think you have to remember that it's not just happening to you. I mean, I do remember the first time I got an editorial letter thinking, oh my God. And then obviously the more you work in this business and the more people you meet, you realize it's happening to everybody. So it's like it's not something to, it's not something to feel terrible about.
Right. And I'm wondering how often you get, which is probably an annoying question. What's a lovely person like you writing such dark stuff? Because I get that question without the lovely person part.
I'm sure that's not true.
But is it a way for you to kind of work through things? For me, it's like just exciting to write about dark conflict and being safe while doing it, and being kind of having this visceral, empathetic experience with my protagonist, but then being able to go and have a nice dinner and not taking on that burden.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely that, which I think is why the genre is so popular, because I think that, our readers are also sitting safely in their beds or on their couches, and they're having that experience that we have writing it. But also, I think that I'm very aware of the dark side of life. I'm very, and I'm very aware that humans are capable of so many things. Sorry, my dog is making such irritating noises. I'm aware that humans are very dark, and even when we don't do bad things, I think we all think bad things a lot. It comes into our mind. Like, I was reading about the Elon Musk, having implanted a chip in people's brains that that you're just going to have to think things and it will come up on your social media. And I was thinking, that is so terrifying because like the amount of sort of horrid thoughts that I have over it's like, and I don't even mean them, they just come into my head, and I'm like, if that was broadcast, if that was sort of said, it would just be. And then I would also get some sort of brain tick where I'd be like, put it on Twitter, and then my brain would do it. So it's like, it's horrific. So I think that, I think we live in a dark world, and I think humans are dark. And I think it's really interesting to explore that. For me, it's really interesting to explore it.
Right. And you want the end to be, a lot of my endings, in my opinion, are like hopeful, and other people are like, geez, that was a really dark ending. I'm like, are you kidding me? I thought it was very uplifting. So it's all perception, but you do kind of want your protagonist to triumph. You just want them to suffer a lot in the process. They have to earn it in a way.
Which I think is true of life,
Absolutely.
It's like, and I agree. I like a hopeful ending. However dark it is as well, I like there to be a feeling of hope. But I mean, I think we all have to work hard to get to the good thing, whatever that is. So I think that, and I think that's true on little macro levels and huge, great big levels. So I think that I think that's one of the reasons we do it, basically.
Yeah, and the good things usually don't come without the struggle, because they're not earned. However that struggle manifests itself.
I always think it's a bit like being pregnant and giving birth. It's a really uncomfortable, not very nice time that lasts pretty much a year, and and then birth is not that nice, but you have this gorgeous baby forever afterwards, and it's like, I think it's a bit like that. It's like life is like lots of little moments of being pregnant and giving
Right.
birth. Like,
Unless you're
you get
unfortunate and your
through it.
kid turns out to be
Yeah.
a real jerk. And
Well, exactly. That could always be that as well.
well, Araminta, we're going to wrap up. Before we do, if you're up for it, we're going to do a really quick storytelling, the making it up portion of the show.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm doing something a little bit unique. I've only done this a couple times before. Normally, I pick 3 books and we choose one of them. I've actually picked your book, so I'm going to ask you to choose a page. Give me a number between. So first of all, we're going to be doing one of the good guys. I'm going to
Yeah.
pick a random sentence out of here with your help. I'm going to read that sentence, and then you give me the next couple sentences in a brand new story. It has nothing to do with your book.
Oh my goodness.
We're going to make up a story just on the spot, just alternating a couple
Okay.
sentences at a time. It's going to last maybe 2 minutes at most. So give me a number between 1 and 270.
73.
Okay, and I'll quickly scan and find. It'll be, I'm sure you're going to read. Well, I never remember when somebody reads something to me of mine. I'm like, I don't remember that at all.
No, I certainly don't remember what's on page 73.
All right, so I'm going to read a sentence and then you tell me what happens next. So we'll actually use one of your characters' names. So here's a sentence. Is it Leonora or Lenora?
Yeah, either, I think. Yeah, just yeah.
Leonora sort of swayed into me, holding on to my arm.
She was so drunk that I was embarrassed that all the people around us had to see that she couldn't stand straight.
And it wasn't like her. In fact, if she had more than 1 glass of wine, it was always a shock to me. So I wondered if something more was going on. I looked over her shoulder and saw the man that she had been talking to staring at us intently.
And she had been incredibly insistent that we go to the party. And she had also said that she had something that she needed to tell me. So now my brain was working overtime, even though she always tells me that I shouldn't add 2 and 2 together to make 5, and that it's a real fault of mine that I don't trust her more.
I knew I only had a few minutes before she was either going to get sick or pass out. So I brought her close to me, held her tightly, and said, "What is it you want to tell me? It's okay."
And she was sick all down my front.
All right, we're going to call it there because that was brilliant. I love like this like mysterious secret finally about to come out, and then she just vomits. That's a beautiful twist.
It's actually
Lovely, lovely,
an
lovely.
easy way to get out of coming out with a secret on this book.
Araminta, what a pleasure talking to you and meeting you, and I hope we get to connect in person at maybe a Thriller Fest or a writers conference sometime. I don't know if
Exactly.
it sounds like you were just in the States. I don't know if you're coming back anytime soon.
Well, I hope so, yes. And I've got good friends who live in New York, so I'm often there. But yeah.
Excellent, excellent. What a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me on.
So that's it. That is my conversation with Araminta Hall. I really enjoyed talking to her. Just a wonderful person. Zero ego about her, and just it's nice to kind of have that free flowing exchange of ideas between 2 writers to get, I don't know, some kind of validation, some kind of like I said earlier, therapy out of it. But yeah, she was really great to talk to. She does not have a website presence. Good for her, and she's very low key slash inactive mostly on social media, but you can Google her name, Araminta Hall, and you can find out all about her and her books. So I encourage you to do so. And while you're on the internet, go ahead and go to my website, carterwilson.com. You can check out my event dates, my books, subscribe to my newsletter, or click on that little link that says For Writers, and that will direct you to my company Unbound Writer, where I do one-on-one writing coaching. I do writing retreats, and soon to be a host of other things as well. So please check that out. Hey folks, thanks so much. More episodes of Making It Out will be out next week. In the meantime, thank you so much as always for watching and or listening. Take care.